The Convent of St. Jude's in Mercy Falls, New York, has no windows that open. But on winter nights, the cold doesn't come from outside. It rises from the kneelers. It breathes down your neck while you pray. And the worst part? You'll hear a whisper that sounds exactly like your own voice, saying, "You've been here before." So tell me, what do you do when the sanctuary refuses to let you leave? My name is Elias Vane. I am 32 years old. I have not slept with my eyes closed in 8 years. I do not enter churches without checking the confessionals first. I do not kneel. I do not bow my head. I do not pray. This is why. December 2014. I was 23 years old and grief had hollowed me out like a winter apple, just skin left, holding nothing but air and the memory of sweetness. My sister died in October. Car accident on a rain-slicked highway. One moment she existed, her laugh filling rooms, her voice on my voicemail that I still couldn't bring myself to delete. The next moment, a phone call. A hole in the world. A future that no longer included her. I spent 2 months on a friend's couch in Brooklyn, watching television at 3 a.m., eating cereal with water because I couldn't remember to buy milk. I was a ghost wearing my skin. Existing, but not living. Salvation, if you can call it that, arrived in the form of a classified ad so absurdly specific it felt like it had been written for me alone. Handwritten on a bulletin board in a laundromat I'd wandered into because I needed to be somewhere that wasn't my friend's couch. Live-in caretaker needed. Abandoned convent. 40 acres, upstate New York. Free room and board in exchange for maintenance and presence. Must be comfortable with silence. Must not ask questions about what the silence contains. Inquire within. I should have stopped at the word convent. I should have stopped at abandoned. I should have stopped at what the silence contains, but grief makes you brave in stupid ways. Grief makes you believe the worst thing that can happen has already happened, that you've already paid the universe its pound of flesh, and now you get to walk through the rest of your life exempt from tragedy. Grief lies. The convent sat on 40 acres of frozen New York forest, accessible by a gravel driveway that hadn't seen tire tracks since the Carter administration. The building rose out of the trees like a skeleton picked clean by something patient. Limestone walls weeping dark streaks of moisture, windows black and empty as missing teeth, a bell tower that leaned just slightly east of straight, as if the weight of all those years had finally begun to tilt it toward hell. But inside, someone had been waiting. The floors gleamed with recent wax. The pews in the chapel had been dusted within the last 24 hours. In the kitchen, a pot of coffee sat warm on the stove, not hot but warm, as if someone had been here minutes ago and wanted me to know it. A single place setting waited at a long wooden table designed for 30 nuns. A note lay on the plate. Handwriting so precise it looked printed. No loops, no flourishes. The handwriting of someone who had spent years copying scripture and never once made a mistake. Welcome, Elias. Your room is the third on the left upstairs. The previous caretaker left suddenly. We hope you last longer. No signature. No explanation. Just that word, we. The first sign was the silence. Not the peaceful quiet of isolation, the soft hush of snowfall, the distant creak of trees. This was a surgical silence. A silence that pressed against your eardrums like it was trying to get inside your skull. The kind of silence that makes you clear your throat just to prove sound still exists. That makes you talk to yourself just to hear a human voice, even if it's your own. I blamed it on the altitude, on the snow, on my own frayed nerves stretched thin by months of grief. The second sign was the cold. It didn't live in the air. It lived in specific places. The chapel's northeast corner, where a statue of the Virgin Mary stood with her hands outstretched, except someone had chipped away her fingers, leaving only stumps. The basement stairwell, where the temperature dropped 20 degrees between one step and the next, as if you were crossing a threshold into somewhere that had never known sun. The third pew from the altar, where the wooden kneeler was worn thin, worn through, despite decades of supposed emptiness. The third sign was Mary Alice. Mary Alice showed up on my fourth night. I heard knocking at the main door, frantic, desperate, the knock of someone who had been running and was afraid of what ran behind them. When I opened it, a girl stood in the snow wearing nothing but a thin cotton nightgown. She couldn't have been more than 16. Her feet were bare, blue-veined, leaving prints that melted too quickly. Her hair was dark and wet, plastered to her skull. Her lips were the color of bruises. "Please," she said. Her voice was small, a child's voice. "I need to come in. I need to pray." I let her inside, wrapped her in a blanket, made her tea with shaking hands. She sat at that long table, alone, in a chair designed for 30, and wrapped her fingers around the mug like she'd forgotten what warmth felt like. She told me her name was Mary Alice Marchand. She'd run away from home after her father found her reading books he didn't approve of. She'd heard about the convent. Everyone in Mercy Falls had heard about it, she said, and she thought maybe God would protect her here. "God doesn't protect people," I said, thinking of my sister. "God just watches." Mary Alice smiled at that. A strange smile, too old for her face. The smile of someone who is seen behind the curtain and found something looking back. "That's what they want you to believe," she said. "But I've been watching too. Longer than you know. And I've learned the truth." She wouldn't explain what she meant. She asked if she could stay the night, just one night, just until morning. The roads were impossible, she said. She'd never make it back down the mountain. I said yes. I shouldn't have said yes. The next morning, Mary Alice was gone. Her bed was made so perfectly you could bounce a coin off it. The teacup was washed, dried, and returned to the cabinet. But on the kitchen table, where the note had been 4 nights before, she'd left something, a small crucifix, old and tarnished, black with age. The figure of Christ had been scratched out, scratched away by something sharp and patient, until only an empty cross remained. Underneath it, written on a scrap of paper in that same precise handwriting from the first note, "The sisters are still here, Elias. They're just waiting for permission to speak. You gave it to them when you opened the door." I called the number from the classified ad. It rang 17 times before a voice answered, a woman's voice, ancient and crackling, like paper being crumpled in a dry room. "She found you," the voice said. Not a question. A statement of fact. "Who was she?" I asked. A long pause. So long I thought the line had died. Then, Mary Alice Marchand died in 1973. She was a postulant here, 16 years old. She tried to leave after the first snow, but the roads were impossible. They found her body at the bottom of the ravine in spring. She'd been trying to walk out, in her nightgown, in February, barefoot in the snow for 3 miles before she fell. The line went dead. I should have left. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to pack my bag, get in my car, drive down that mountain and never look back. To burn that place to the ground if I had to. But grief, remember? Grief had made me stupid. Grief had made me curious. Grief had made me believe I'd already lost everything that mattered. So what was left to fear? And somewhere in the basement, I heard a door open. The basement stairs descended into absolute dark. I'd explored down there before, empty storage rooms lined with rusted shelving, a root cellar that smelled of potatoes rotting 50 years ago, old coal bins filled with nothing but shadows. But tonight, at the bottom of those stairs, light flickered. Candlelight. Orange and unsteady, throwing dancing shapes against stone walls. And voices. Women's voices. Singing. I should have run. I should have grabbed my keys and driven through that gate and never stopped until I hit the ocean. Instead, I crept down step by step, my heart a war drum in my chest, my breath fogging in air so cold it hurt to inhale. The singing grew louder. A Latin hymn I didn't recognize, sung in perfect unison. The melody was wrong, though. The intervals were too close, too clashing. Notes that should have resolved into harmony twisted into something else. Something that made my back teeth ache and my vision blur at the edges. It sounded like beauty trying to strangle itself. The door, at the bottom of the stairs, stood open. Beyond it, the convent's old chapel, the one they'd sealed off in 1978, the one I'd been told was structurally unsound and off-limits for any reason, it was full of nuns. They knelt in the pews, backs to me, habits gray with age, heads bowed so low their foreheads nearly touched the wood. Candles burned on the altar, dozens of them, their flames unnaturally still despite the draft that made my skin crawl. And at the altar itself, a figure stood facing the crucifix, a woman in white, arms raised, conducting the hymn like an orchestra of the damned. The singing stopped. Every nun turned. They had no faces. Where eyes should have been, there was only smooth, waxy skin, like a doll left too close to a fire. Where mouths should have opened in song, there was nothing but seamless flesh, unbroken from chin to hairline. They were mannequins, effigies, empty vessels. And yet they moved, turned toward me in perfect synchronization, their blank faces somehow watching, somehow hungry, their heads tilting at angles that should have broken necks that no longer existed. The woman in white lowered her arms. "Elias," she said, and her voice was my sister's voice. "Elias, we've been waiting so long for someone to hear us, for someone to see us, for someone lonely enough and broken enough and stupid enough to open the door and let us out." I ran. I ran up those stairs so fast I fell twice, my palms scraping raw on stone, my knees splitting open on edges I couldn't see through tears of terror. I burst into the main floor and slammed the basement door and shoved a table against it and stood there shaking, gasping, praying to a God I wasn't sure existed anymore. Praying to any God, every God, the God my sister believed in and the God she stopped believing in, and the God who let her die on a rain-slicked highway in October. Behind the door, the singing resumed. But this time it came from everywhere. From the walls, from the floorboards, from the crucifix in my pocket, the empty one Mary Alice left, which vibrated against my chest like a struck bell, like a phone ringing in hell. And then, softly, gently, politely, a knock at the main entrance. I opened it. Mary Alice stood there, still in her nightgown, still barefoot in the snow. But this time, her eyes were wrong. Too dark, too deep, like looking down a well and realizing something is looking back from the bottom. Like realizing the well has no bottom. "I forgot something," she said. "What?" she smiled. That too old smile. The smile of something that had been waiting in the dark for a very long time. "I forgot to tell you that you can't leave. The sisters won't allow it. They've been alone for so long, Elias. Decades. Centuries. They need a congregation. They need worshipers. And you? She reached up, touched my face with fingers so cold they burned. You're the first living soul to walk through that door in 36 years. You think that's an accident? You think your sister died by accident? Behind her, figures emerged from the tree line. Nuns. Dozens of them. Walking through the snow in their gray habits, their faceless heads tilted toward me, their handless arms reaching out. They moved in perfect unison. Perfect silence. Their feet left no prints. Mary Alice stepped inside without my permission. They tried to leave, you know, she whispered, close enough that I could feel her breath, cold, so cold, like the air from a freshly opened grave. The real nuns. In 1978. They tried to abandon this place, to tell the diocese what was happening here. But something followed them out. Something that had been growing in the walls for 100 years. Feeding on their prayers. Feeding on their faith. Feeding on their loneliness. What are you? I heard myself ask. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded like someone else, far away, asking a question they already knew the answer to. I'm what happens when a prayer is never answered, she said. When you kneel for decades, and the only response is silence, eventually, the silence learns to speak. The sisters didn't die, Elias. They became the answer to their own prayers. They became the presence in the empty church. They became what they worshipped. Behind her, the faceless nuns reached the door. Their hands, cold hard, like carved wood, like frozen meat, touched the frame. Touched the threshold. Touched me. I screamed. I woke in my bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. Pale winter sunlight, weak and watery, but sunlight nonetheless. Birds sang outside. My alarm clock read 7 a.m. For one glorious, delusional moment, I believed it had all been a nightmare. A stress-induced hallucination. Grief finally breaking my brain. Then I looked at my hands. My palms were scraped raw. Dried blood caked my fingers, dark under the nails. My knees beneath the blanket throbbed with pain. And on my nightstand, where no object had been before, sat a small wooden crucifix with the figure of Christ scratched out. I dressed. I packed nothing. I ran for my car. The driveway was longer than I remembered. The trees pressed closer, their branches reaching toward me like hands. The sky, which had been bright moments ago, dimmed to the color of old bruises, purple and yellow and sickly green at the edges. And when I finally reached the end of that gravel path, heart pounding, lungs burning, I found a gate that hadn't been there before. Iron bars, 20 feet high, topped with barbed wire that curled like thorns, locked with a chain that looked 100 years old and absolutely unbreakable. Behind me, the convent's bell began to toll. Not a call to prayer, a celebration. I turned. They stood in a line across the driveway, every nun I'd seen in the basement, their faceless heads raised to the bruised sky, their hands clasped in prayer. And at their center, wearing a white habit now, stood Mary Alice. Or whatever Mary Alice had become. "Did you think we'd let you leave?" she called. Her voice carried perfectly, despite the distance, despite the wind, despite the blood roaring in my ears. "Did you think we'd let you go back to the world and tell them what lives here?" "I won't tell anyone," I said. "I swear. I'll forget everything. I'll never speak of this place. Just let me go. You'll forget nothing." She walked toward me, and the other nuns parted to let her pass. "That's the cruelty of it, Elias. That's the gift of it. You'll remember every detail, every face, every sound, every prayer you never prayed, and no one will believe you. They'll say you were grieving your sister. They'll say the isolation got to you. They'll say you were always fragile, always broken, always looking for something to believe in. My sister, I interrupted. You spoke with her voice. In the basement, Mary Alice stopped walking. For the first time, her expression shifted, something like pity crossing that young old face. Something like hunger crossing that ancient young smile. Your sister isn't dead, Elias. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. I had been to the funeral. I had watched them lower the casket into frozen ground. I had held my mother while she wept. What, she's here? She's been here since the accident. The roads that night, they weren't wet with rain. They were wet with something else. Something that wanted her to find this place. Something that's been waiting for your family for generations. For you, the gate behind me rattled. I spun around. A figure stood on the other side of the bars. A woman. Dark hair, familiar eyes, a smile I'd known my whole life. The same smile that had greeted me on birthdays. The same eyes that had laughed at my stupid jokes. The same face that had been lowered into frozen ground 2 months ago. Eli, my sister said. Let me in. It's cold out here. Her voice was wrong. Her voice was perfect. I watched them bury you, I whispered. You watched them bury an empty box. She pressed her face against the bars, and her skin moved. Rippled. Like something beneath the surface was trying to get out. Like something wearing her face was smiling at me from inside her skull. The real me is in there. In the chapel. Kneeling at the altar, just like the Mother Superior. Waiting for you to come find me. Waiting for you to save me. Waiting for you to join me. Behind me, Mary Alice laughed. A sound like breaking glass. Now you understand, she said. This place doesn't haunt the dead. It collects them. It keeps them. Forever. Your sister has been here for 3 months, Elias. By the time you find her, she'll be one of us. By the time you stop running, you'll be one of us too. I fell to my knees in the snow. The nuns surrounded me. Their faceless heads bowed. Their handless statues reached for me. And from somewhere deep in the convent, from the sealed chapel, from the basement stairs, from the northeast corner where the mutilated Virgin stood, a choir began to sing. Not a hymn. A welcome. I don't know how long I knelt there. Hours. Days. Time moves differently when you're being gathered. When you're being collected. When you're being added to a congregation that has been waiting for you since before you were born. Eventually, the nuns withdrew. The gate, for reasons I still don't understand, swung open. Mary Alice stood over me, her bare feet blue against the snow, her nightgown untouched by wind, and she said one thing before she walked back toward the convent, one thing I have never forgotten, one thing I hear every night before I fall asleep. Go, Elias. Tell your story. Let them laugh. Let them call you crazy. Let them make videos about you, and share your story and forget your name. But know this, every time someone dismisses what you saw, a door opens somewhere. Every time someone calls you insane, a threshold weakens. We don't need you to stay. We need you to speak. Because the more you talk about us, the more real we become. The more people hear your story, the more of them we can find. The more of them we can gather. I ran. I drove until I ran out of gas, then walked until I found a highway, then hitched rides until I reached a city big enough to lose myself in. I told no one what I'd seen. I changed my name. I found work. I tried to forget. But the dreams came every night. My sister, kneeling at that altar. My sister, turning toward me with no face. My sister, singing in that hymn that sounded like beauty strangling itself. And last week, I got a letter. No return address. Postmarked from Mercy Falls, New York. Inside, a single photograph, the convent's chapel taken recently. The pews were full of people I recognized. My sister knelt in the front row, her face perfectly visible, her eyes closed in prayer. Behind her, my mother, dead 10 years, knelt in the second pew. My father in the third. Grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, friends from high school. A woman I sat next to on a bus in 2009. A man I'd never met but whose face I somehow knew, somehow remembered from a dream I'd had as a child. And in the back row, barely visible in the shadows, a figure that looked exactly like me. The photograph was dated 3 months from now. On the back, in handwriting I knew too well, my sister's handwriting, the same loops and curls she'd used in every letter she ever wrote me. The sacrament is almost complete, brother. We have your name. We have your blood. We have your fear. We have your story. The only thing missing is you. Come home, Elias. The sisters are waiting to welcome you properly. Forever is so much easier when you stop running. Love always, your sister. This is the story of the Convent of St. Jude's, Mercy Falls, New York. It is not a ghost story. It is a gathering. The most profound evil does not storm the chapel with fire and fury. It kneels in the pew. It bows its head. It prays alongside you until you forget it was ever a stranger. It feeds on loneliness until loneliness becomes a congregation. It answers prayers that were never meant to be answered. It mistakes silence for consent, absence for invitation, faith for a door left unlocked. So listen closely, family. If you ever find yourself in a place that feels too holy, too still, if the cold settles not in the air, but in your marrow, if you hear singing where there should be silence, if a girl appears at your door in a nightgown with eyes that are too old and a smile that is too patient, do not open the door. Some places are not haunted by what was lost, but by what was gathered, by what was collected, one soul at a time, until the walls themselves became a reliquary of the damned, until the prayers themselves became a cage. And some invitations are not gifts, but traps, baited with the faces of everyone you've ever loved, wrapped in the handwriting of everyone you've ever lost. If you have a story that haunts you, if you've ever opened a door you shouldn't have, or spoken a name you should have forgotten, send it to thedreadcodex@gmail.com. Your truth becomes our tale. Your likes and comments keep these stories alive. Until next time, may your path be lit. May your faith be your own. May you never answer when something knocks and calls you by name. Good night, family. Sleep with one eye open.